This is a Renegade Media Network podcast. You are now listening to the Counterflow podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in fucking half, but I call him the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
Here we go. Happy New Year, you guys. Happy New Year and happy new show. Look at this. Take a look at the surroundings. Counterflow is now on the air. And I told you guys a bit of, at the last episode of Death to Tyrants last week, or just a few days ago now, was a bonus episode with my friend, the Dissident Mama. I kind of explained why the name change was coming and the wonderful opportunity that has been put in front of me that I'm accepting gladly. Thanks to my friend Thaddeus Russell, who is our guest today. We will get to him shortly here. But I should at least, I should explain a few other things. And so I think that with this new slight rebranding of sorts, I can allow you guys to know more parts of my personality that I might not have let out in the past on Death to Tyrants, or my musical side. A few times I had Reverend Horton Heat on the show, and my friend Big Sandy and Dale Watson have been on the show. But why not explore that more? And I think one thing that 2020 showed me is that I don't want to be pigeonholed as a libertarian, because a lot of libertarians showed themselves to be pretty damn blue-pilled. Wouldn't you agree? And so I don't want to be pigeonholed as that. When I've done a lot of the episodes, say with like Pedro Gonzalez and Ryan Gerdowski, where, I'm communicating with these people offline. And at first, when they hear libertarian, they're really turned off. And when you see people like the blue-pilled LP types and the people that get the media's attention, I can't blame them for being turned off. So I just don't want to be pigeonholed as that. Obviously, my politics are still the same. But I think at this point, after what we've been through with 2020, if you're red-pilled, I don't really care as much about how you label yourself politically. You're on my side. And so I will get to focus on the fact that I do have inroads into the music scene in this country and around the world, so to speak. And so if I find some music types that are red-pilled, I'm bringing them on this show. A lot of you guys don't know, probably majority of you don't know that I'm a firefighter, and I've done that for 22 years. And that kind of leads to the fact that I am very much into weightlifting and fitness and stuff like that. If there's people in that world that are red-pilled, they're coming on this show if I can get them to. And so, I didn't want to be totally pigeonholed into the libertarian world. And, a lot of libertarians didn't handle 2020 like I expected. And so I was kind of red-pilled on that. So having said that, first, let me give a quick shout out also to my new artwork was done by my friend, we'll call him Bert Grimm. You might know him from Twitter as @NeoconRemover, Ludwig von Jesus. Thank you so much for the artwork for Counterflow podcast. The guy's so damn good and so cool. He was offering to do it for free because he's a fan of this show, of Death to Tyrants and now Counterflow. But there's no way I'm going to let him do this for free. He's too good at what he does. So give him a follow on Twitter @NeoconRemover. And obviously I have to thank Thaddeus Russell, who we're going to get to here in a second, like I said, for giving me this opportunity that's presented. And that's kind of has to do with the name change. What else? Some of you guys know about some possible news coming within the realm of the Libertarian Party that's giant coming up this year. And it is giant and it's good, but we need to look outside of that as well. And so when there are alliances to be formed and olive branches to be extended, this show will focus on some of that too. And I can tell you there's some big news in that regard coming in 2021 as well. You remember the Paleo Libertarian Alliance between Lou Rockwell, Ron Paul, Murray Rothbard, and Pat Buchanan in the 90s. Well, there's going to be some renewed energy in that realm as well. And I definitely will be a part of that too. So I'm looking at this rebrand as a time to just do what I want. And it's, I was my own boss before. I'm essentially my own boss now. And I could have, but it's kind of once you work yourself into a niche, you got to stay there, it feels like. So with this slight rebrand, I do feel that I get to to use a cliche, spread my wings a bit. And I'm going to do just that. Also, I'm sure I've got new attacks coming at me on Twitter here and there, and I suspect they will continue. But, as you reach a larger audience, there's always going to be people that don't like you, and that's just what I expect, and that's fine. So, having said all of that, welcome to the new Counterflow podcast, and my first guest of this new platform, this new year, and yesterday was my birthday too, so this new year for all of us, and for me, I'm now 44. My guest is Thaddeus Russell, and we've got some big news to unveil, and we do that at the end of this interview. You guys know Thad well. He is the proprietor over at Renegade University. He's the author of the great book, A Renegade History of the United States. A friend just wrote me the other day and said, it's a red-pilled guy, and he said, what books maybe that I don't know that you think are hardcore red pills? And my first response was A Renegade History of the United States. You got to read that if you haven't. And that goes for you guys too. Obviously, he's of the Unregistered podcast. Thaddeus Russell is here with us on the show. Thad, my friend, welcome back to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm great because I'm back on Buck Johnson's show.
Yeah,
the new show.
Right. I say welcome back to the show. Welcome to the new format and the new show.
Yeah, man. Counterflow in the house.
Yes. Guest number 1.
Wow. What an honor. Thank you.
Yeah. At some point, we got to talk about what is in store for 2021 in all kinds of facets. But I kind of wanted to talk about 2020 and some things we've learned, not necessarily a recap of all the events because that's kind of been done quite a bit, but some takeaways that you might have from 2021. Because for me, my thinking changed on a lot of things because of the events that happened. And I suppose that, that's as you live life, that happens. But 2020 was something else. So I want to talk about some of the moments that changed the way you might look at things and what comes to mind first in that regard.
Well, so in terms of the world outside me,
yeah,
clearly the worst year in my life. Okay. So in terms of the social situation, the political situation, culturally, this is without a doubt the worst year that I've ever experienced in the United States of America. And I was born in 1965. You could say that the Vietnam War, was a darker moment, but I was but a child during that. But certainly since then, since 1973, since the withdrawal of troops from Vietnam, how could there have been a worse year than this one, politically, socially, and culturally? For me personally, it's been very mixed in that Unregistered has done better than ever because we moved to a video format with Zoom and made it much easier to get guests. And I don't have to travel around the country anymore to interview people. And we've had a show every week this year without fail and have had wonderful guests, and the audience has grown. And our YouTube presence has been especially astounding how fast it's grown. I think we've more than doubled our subscribers just this year. So that's, I'm not going to thank the governors who locked us down for that. It's more I'm thanking myself and all of us for adapting to what's been forced upon us. My personal relationship with my girlfriend actually benefited from this too. We were sort of forced into close contact and in a lot of intimacy early on. We started dating in January and quarantine hit here in March. the Bay Area was the first place in the United States to get hit with the quarantine. And so we ended up sort of living together for a couple of weeks at the beginning of it because we didn't know what was going on. We thought we would get separated. I live in Oakland and she lives in the Marin. And they were threatening to close the bridges and stuff. And we thought like at that point, maybe we'd never see each other again if we separated. So we stayed. Anyway, so we've developed a really great relationship. And she's also very much on my side in opposing the lockdowns and the masking culture and all that. So we're sort of a team, and that's been nice. The lockdowns, though, have also, had a really heavy toll on me too, just like with most people. This is not unusual. I think this is most people. But, more loneliness. Like when I'm not with my girlfriend, I'm pretty much on my own, and that sucks. And I just hate it. I just hate feeling right now, especially. It's especially bad. We got yelled at last night on the street. 3 times we've been yelled at on the street. This is every time we've been outdoors, walking outdoors, and been yelled at for not wearing masks by lunatics. And it's gotten to the point where I feel the side eyes all the time now when I'm outside, and I dread going outside, and I refuse to wear a mask. I just will not do it when it's not necessary. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessary, people. There is zero evidence that you can get it from walking by someone on the street. So it's been mixed. I'm just really proud of myself, my girlfriend, you, my friends who have adapted to this and made our lives better despite what the government has done to us.
Were you surprised in the way in which kind of these people are willing to be soldiers for the government, for the powers that be voluntarily, like, the screaming at people? I guess I was disheartened by how far people are willing to go to kind of do as they're told and be the soldiers and take it out on others who aren't going with the marching orders.
Yeah. I wish I knew what the motivations were among everyone, because I think they differ. My girlfriend had a good friend of hers over last night, and I believe this was the first time this woman had done anything social since March.
Gosh.
She's single. She lives alone. She spent Christmas alone. She spent Thanksgiving alone. I don't think she's really left her house since March. And she started talking about it and just started weeping. Mm. She's very, very worried about getting COVID and always has been. I think that's really what's been in her mind. I don't know how moralistic. She didn't seem terribly moralistic about other people who don't wear masks. I don't know. But certainly she's been very afraid. And now that's because of the media and the politicians screaming at us every day with the numbers, and X number of Americans are now dead in the case rate every day. If you watch cable news, I don't know how you could not go crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like we're living in the bubonic plague era. If you watch CNN or any of them, they got the numbers.
Yep.
All the time on the Chiron. They got the number of cases all 24/7. So there's them, and I'm sympathetic to those people. I get that. I think they're wrong. I mean, I just think it's hypochondria, basically. Although I know getting COVID sucks. And you got it, right?
I did get it, yeah.
And what was it like? You haven't told me.
It didn't suck that bad, to be honest. And I don't want to come across as someone that's like, well, I'm in good shape, so screw everyone who's not. But
it's true.
I never had a fever. I had muscle aches at first, which is what kind of told me I think this is not just from a workout. It feels weird. And so I got a COVID test, and it was positive. And the muscle aches were gone by the time I got the results for the test. And so I quarantined, even away from my wife. At the time, we had a 2-story house.
Wow.
And it was basically like living in an apartment. I was upstairs. She would bring food, set it at the top of the stairs, and go back downstairs. I would go eat, and never got a fever. Lost my taste completely.
Wow.
Yeah, so when you feel otherwise normal and hungry, it's weird to eat a meal and not taste it. And I would have her, I'd order Indian food from this restaurant nearby and say, make it as spicy as possible. Didn't break through it, nothing. Tried whiskey.
Really?
So, I mean, if that's the worst that can happen to someone from being sick, it's not particularly that much of a deal. I kind of felt afterwards like, Well, cool. Now I'm not scared of it at all. I already had it. I'm not going to get it. And what's the deal? I don't understand why we're ruining people's lives over what I just went through.
Well, I know, let's see, I know 2 people personally who got it and were laid out for more than a month.
Wow.
And these were people, one of them in particular was a total skeptic about the lockdown. So she had no reason to like exaggerate this. In fact, she had none at all. She was wiped out for, I think it was like 6 weeks or something like that. And then a member of RU, Renegade University, also, she was a regular at RU Live, our weekly show, and she disappeared this summer. And we were like, wondering, where's Wendy? Where's Wendy? And then she finally reappeared in the fall. And I said, what's going on? She said she was out of commission for much of the summer because of COVID. So yeah, it's, you know, I don't want that to happen. That would put a major monkey wrench into my life.
Yes.
Not just the discomfort of it, but my work would get destroyed by it. Anyway, so there's those people who I think, you know, it's legitimate on some level to be afraid of that. I get that. You know, I mean, I don't want to get sick for weeks on end and not be able to function. There's those, and then there's the totalitarians.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I think we've now, the nice thing in a way, I suppose, is that we've now revealed, or the totalitarians among us have been revealed.
Yes.
We now know who has an urge to control people, to moralize, to shame them, to control them through shaming.
Yes.
That's a particular personality type.
Yeah.
Not everyone's built like that. Thank God, I think most people are not. I'm quite sure it's a small minority. It's just that they tend to run the show.
They're the vocal minority for sure.
They're the ones you know about, you hear from. That's who yelled at us on the street, you know? Not even on the street. It was a goddamn walking path through the woods, man. Like, it was insane. It was like, and I said, there was not a single other person around. So crazy. At night. It was dark out. Crazy. So yeah, she's, that woman who yelled at us. I mean, I would imagine that's what she's like. And, you know, I hate to say it, but you know, there's kind of a Christian ethic underneath it, you know, secular version of Christian ethics, which is, you know, you must be selfless at all times. And any indication that you are self-interested is a sign of sin, you know, and to live a godly life according to the New Testament. I hope I'm not alienating too much of your audience, but, you know, most Christians read that New Testament as saying that selflessness is virtue, right?
Right.
Sort of the opposite of what, as I understand it, Ayn Rand was preaching.
Yes.
I never read Rand, but I have read the Bible. And it's, and so this is where the Puritans came from, who invented this country. The idea of spending money on yourself is anathema. You make money, but you've got to reinvest it in something that's good for the community. You know, build a library or build a hospital. That's what all the great robber barons did in the 19th century and still do. This is what does Bill Gates do with his money? What does Warren Buffett do with his money? They give it away in troves to change the world, to help the world, right? So it's, there are certain people who are built that way, and most of us, fortunately, are not. I was thinking of, we should come up with so gay men and women, often, they still do, but certainly when they were in the closet before gay marriage and all that, they would have different ways of signaling that they're gay that straights wouldn't be aware of, right? Wearing a bandana in one pocket or the other, you know, I think was a sign. I think they still have a lot of signs to let others know, you know, you have to. And I want to have masks that have some kind of insignia on it that says that I think this is bullshit without announcing it to everyone else. But you and I would know, you know?
Yeah.
So we could high five each other when we see each other at the supermarket or something.
Right.
But I also want to know, I want to know everyone's motivation. I want it to be on their mask. I want it to say, I'm worried about getting sick, or I think it's evil to not wear a mask, or, you know, I hate Trump, or, you know, whatever the reason is, you know? So it's, because I feel so alone. The worst part of this thing is feeling alone when I'm in public, like really alienated and really isolated.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, especially in the Bay Area where there's 97% compliance, there's a study that's been done that shows that. And that seems about right. About 97%. People in cars by themselves, people walking all by themselves outside wearing masks. It's very, very common. Most people do that here. I want to know why. Like, what is it? If it's just a fear of the virus itself, okay, we can talk about that. I'm not, but if it's that, I had my ex-sister-in-law told my son agrees with me on this stuff. She said, she yelled at him for not wearing a mask. And she said, this is incredible. She said, it's not about rationality and logic. It's about other people's feelings. That's why we wear masks. She was acknowledging that the science doesn't make sense here, but that this is pure virtue signaling. Yes. This is pure moralism. This is like the pure sort of Christian style selflessness. At least it's the performance of that, right?
Right.
And that's the stuff that needs to be attacked and destroyed. We need to somehow change the culture of our society so that people like that are the bad guys and we are the good guys.
Right.
Virtue signaling should be shamed. I'm against shame, except when it comes to the shamers.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should shame the shamers. If that's what they're all about, then that must be attacked, because they are the enemy of life.
Yes.
They are the enemy of happiness, not just of freedom. They're clearly the enemies of freedom, but they don't want people to be happy.
Right.
They don't want people, they enjoy the misery. It's like me. I like rain. I like rainy days, but I get that most people don't. Most people like sunshine. I think there's something about my depressive personality that is attracted to rain, because it kind of like makes everyone sad the way that I am in a way, or moody the way that I am, or whatever it is. I'm talking about myself here, people. I'm being, self-revealing here, but I think it's similar. I think there's like this depressiveness about certain people, and they want it to be shared by everyone.
Yes, that's funny, because someone I know in Austin is very much a loner, very much a negative personality, one of the vocal minorities, we're hoping they're a minority, on Facebook about if you should go outside, you should be shot kind of thing. And a mutual friend of ours said, if everyone complies and doesn't work and sits at home by themselves, we have all been brought down to his level.
Yeah.
And that's what he wants.
Yeah.
We are all at that point sitting there in solitude, and he's going to say, see, I've been doing this. Now you guys all do it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm speculating. Let me be really clear to everyone. I have no evidence for this. Not really. I mean, I can only I have some circumstantial evidence.
Yes.
So here's my circumstantial evidence. So as a lot of people know, I was a socialist for much of my life. I was a lefty, full-on lefty until my mid-30s. And that's 20 years ago, by the way. And the reason, and I've said this many, many times over the years, many, many times, actually the main reason I left the left was that they all seemed so unhappy. They were miserable. They lived entirely in their heads. They were unaware of what was on TV. They didn't go to the movies. They didn't know who Madonna was. They didn't listen to music, and that they maybe listened to classical music, perhaps. They read books that were only nonfiction books about history and politics and philosophy. They're intellectuals entirely too. That's a big part of it. Intellectuals are not the happiest people because they're cut off from their body and all the pleasures that it affords us, right? And I just didn't want to live that way. And I felt like, they wanted to share the misery. They wanted to spread. They wanted an equal distribution of misery. They're egalitarians.
Yes.
They want everyone to be equally miserable, is what I guessed.
Yeah.
Is what I guessed. And I was also in the Soviet Union in 1987. I visited the Soviet Union for 2 weeks. And ask pretty much anybody who lived in the Soviet Union, it's not like people were being tortured in the streets. I mean, sometimes, but that's not what was going on. But there was this sort of overall sort of like bleakness, like a gray mood everywhere, and that went for the architecture. I mean, Moscow's infamous Stalinist, brutalist architecture, right? These giant blocks of apartment buildings, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not, you're not thrown into a dungeon and being, whipped and flogged and having your genitals electrocuted. It's not that.
Right.
That happens in other regimes.
Right.
This is just this overall depressiveness that everyone pretty much experienced. Even the apparatchiks, even the people in the Politburo, they still had to live in the damn place amid all this misery. So I do think it's that. I think it's people envying others for their happiness.
Yes. Yeah. Is there a climate out there right now that you can sense where there's any type of resistance movement kind of bubbling up under this? And I mean a real resistance movement, not the hashtag pink bumper sticker ones with the pink hat. I mean a legitimate one against lockdowns and mask mandates. You said it's 97% compliance rate is insane to me, especially, it's a different culture where I'm at. But
yes,
is there something bubbling up?
Yes, there is. Less certainly in the Bay Area, but across California, there's a big resistance movement in sort of the red counties.
Okay.
We have quite a few counties in California that are Republican. I hate the fact that it lines up this way because I ain't no Republican, never have been. Fuck the Republican Party. I am never been a conservative. Obviously, I'm sort of an anti-conservative, and I have more bad things to say about Trump than good things these days, as a matter of fact. So I hate that. I hate that the anti-lockdown protests always have Trump flags.
Yeah.
God damn it. And some of them have Confederate flags. Fuck those people and fuck them for like destroying my argument, my movement, and giving the progressives this tool, this weapon to destroy me with, right? They just assume you're a Trumpist, Trumper, whatever it is, Trumpian, which is just not true. So yeah, there is quite a bit of resistance. Back in the summer in, what county was it? I think it's where Redding is, whatever county that is. Redding is a city in Northern California.
Mm-hmm.
There was a huge resistance movement among business owners, right? That's who's leading it, by the way. God bless the entrepreneurs and the small business owners who are getting crushed. They're getting crushed while Jeff Bezos, Amazon, and Target and Costco and Hollywood. Oh, and wineries. People don't know this. This is great. So the two industries that have exemptions to the lockdowns in California are Hollywood and the wine industry. Gavin Newsom, our lovely governor, handsome man, very articulate, sweet guy. What's his business? He owns one of the biggest wineries in California. Huge wine conglomerate, actually. He has wine shops, wineries, restaurants, all under this Plump. It's called Plump Jack Winery. Everybody should Google it and go pick it in front of them. The wineries in this state, which have a ton of money that they give to politicians, are allowed to be open, but breweries and brew pubs, the beer peasants, no, lockdown. Hollywood is operating in full swing right now. Tom Cruise just gave that, just lashed out at his crew in England, right? What was he saying? Was he saying, I don't want to get sick? No, he wasn't saying anything about getting sick or getting other people sick. He was talking about the business and how people would lose their jobs if they closed down and how much money was at stake for all kinds of people. Tom Cruise, I actually get it, man. I'm sympathetic to that. I'm just saying you shouldn't be the only people having the exemption. The French Laundry debacle, Gavin Newsom, when he was at the very, very, very ultra fancy restaurant without a mask on with 15 people, super spreader event, Gavin. The guy whose birthday it was, they were celebrating, is the chief lobbyist for Hollywood in the California state legislature.
Go figure.
Yeah. Now, I think it's the other reason they're allowing Hollywood, and by the way, pro sports, right?
Yeah.
To operate, is also because they want to keep us at home watching TV.
Yeah.
It's also a way to keep their economy somewhat alive. It's not in their interest to destroy the economy. And by the way, this is what I keep wondering, like, when is Gavin gonna, what's the balance he's trying to strike here? I mean, you don't want to be the governor of California when it becomes a third world country. which is what it will be if we keep doing this, right? So I think he's letting these select businesses operate to keep some kind of decent economy going here. But I really don't know. It's like their desire to control and socially engineer trumps, so to speak, their desire for a healthy society to govern. I mean, I don't understand the calculus. I'm really wondering, like Whitmer in Michigan, same thing, Cuomo in New York, they're on the verge of destroying the greatest cities in American history. Not Whitmer so much, but certainly New York and here, right?
Right.
These are the crown jewels of the United States, San Francisco, New York City, and Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And they are going under real fast. So I'd love to know what's in their minds too. What's the real motivation? I mean, I gotta think it's fear of being blamed for, one COVID death. I guess there's that. It's being associated with Trump. I think a lot of this is Trump derangement syndrome. Oh my God, Buck, did you see what the AMA did with hydroxychloroquine?
No.
They just announced that it's actually fine, that it's not dangerous.
Yeah.
The American Medical Association just last week. How many thousands of people lost their lives because they wouldn't take it because Trump said it was a good thing?
Yeah.
And the media and the whole political class was right there talking about how crazy and irresponsible it was to say that this drug could help people. Remember when they said it was like fish tank cleaner?
Yep.
Because that one idiot took it with his wife, took fish tank cleaner instead of the actual drug, hydroxychloroquine. So Trump derangement syndrome, it turns out, kills people.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's not just super annoying. It kills people. It's so grotesque and stupid and mean and dumb. I just can't get over it. When that came out, I lost it. So there's 2020.
What's up, guys? I would like to tell you about a wonderful small company that reached out to me to sponsor this show because they love the content. That company is Paloma Verde CBD and Organics. It is owned by two great people, Carlos and Vanessa Abalar, in my old town of San Antonio. They are libertarians, and honestly, the COVID lockdown was a bit of a blow to their brick and mortar location. But Carlos has assured me they are tough and will soldier on with business from people like my listeners. That is you guys. They will power on. I trust that for sure. Go check out their website at palomaverdestore.com, where you can find things like their amazing melatonin CBD gummies if you'd like to sleep a little bit better. You can find the sports cream if you've got achy muscles. I know you guys work out constantly, and they've even got CBD skin salve. Of course, they have the CBD extract tinctures for daily use. They have gummies for all occasions, including strictly vegan ones, if that is your thing. You guys know the great anti-inflammatory benefits of CBD. And by the way, all of their products over at Paloma Verde are THC-free. They've even got the studies on their website to show exactly that. And so check this out. I told you they're great people. They want to support my show. Here's what they're going to do for you guys. When you use promo code BUCK, B-U-C-K, you will get 25% off of any purchase over $75. You will also get 10% off of your first purchase when you sign up for their emails. So add that up. 25% plus 10% will give you a total of 35% off of your first purchase. You want to support a small libertarian-owned business and support my show at the same time and get a great product that you will love? Go to palomaverdestore.com and use promo code BUCK, B-U-C-K. That is palomaverdestore.com, promo code BUCK. Is there I know your business is doing quite well, and I'm obviously thankful for that. Do you see yourself ever leaving California? Would there be a tipping point where you say, look, I can't do this here?
People tell me this every day on Twitter, every day, especially recently for some reason. They're like, Dad, get out of California so you can stop complaining about it all the time. I knew coming back here, I had not lived here since I was in college, basically. I mean, since I was 22, from 22 to until last year, I lived in New York City and LA and Oregon. And I knew that it would be hard for me for some personal reasons, but also because of the environment of this damn place. No, I have committed to doing something that I'm going to announce right now publicly for the first time. Buck, this is what you bring out of me, man.
Yes.
I am intent. I'm going to give it my all, and I'm pretty optimistic about this, on building a city within a city right here. We have people here. We have members of the RU, Renegade University, and unregistered community in the Bay Area. We've got probably hundreds of people. And I know a lot of them personally, and they're dying to get together and meet up and do stuff. So I am intent on building a community here. I'm a communitarian, right? That is not in conflict with individualism at all, right?
Right.
This is voluntary.
Correct.
Communitarianism. I believe very fully in community as a principal source of happiness.
Yes.
By the way, I need it. This has been the problem with the pandemic and the lockdown, is that we've lost that. We've lost all sense of community. So yeah, I want to start doing events here that are free, getting people together, having a network of people right here in the belly of the beast amid all these totalitarians. We're going to have a network of free individuals who help each other, are simply available to hang out, to talk. I want to do men's groups. I think that's really important. I think men are in a world of trouble right now. I think they have been for quite a while. That's unaddressed. You know, women have plenty of problems of their own, but they get addressed all the time.
Right.
We're always talking about them and what we should do to help them. And we very rarely talk about men. And the fact that, what's the suicide rate among white men? It's like off the charts. It's like some huge percentage of suicides is people like me in my demographic. And does that ever get talked about? No, like never.
Right.
It's an epidemic, and I'm sure this year it's even worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to build a city within a city in the Bay Area and show and create a real alternative here. And we'll have classes, we'll have events, we'll do all sorts of stuff here. But there's enough people around. And with the internet, we can do this, we can facilitate it pretty easily. And this can be replicated right in New York City. It can be replicated in Austin, Texas. It can be replicated anywhere. And I think that's what everybody should be aspiring to. Building your own community where you are, where you want to be, even if it's controlled by people you can't stand, who are the enemies of freedom and life and happiness. You can still do it right within their grasp, and they won't even know it.
Wow. Breaking news then.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 2021. That's what I have in mind for 2021. And I've already started working on it. I've already started talking to people. People are very excited about this. So, and we've actually had a couple of little get-togethers here of sort of the broader community that I've kind of developed here, which was fantastic. Had a lot of people show up at the beach in Point Reyes, and it was fantastic. And that's what gave me the idea. So you'll be seeing more of that. And I really want people to do this in other cities as well. When you feel all alone like that, you can do it. You can actually build your own community. There's no reason why you can't.
Interesting. I like that. And there's been obviously a lot of people voting with their feet. I know people are fleeing California in record numbers.
Right.
But that's an interesting alternative to it for sure. And I talked to someone that said they had some friends move away from California. There was not one U-Haul truck in the entire state available to rent.
Wow.
Incredible.
Wow. Yeah, I know. I mean, I know there's a huge outflux of, certainly, I know businesses and I know wealthy people are leaving. I wonder about working class people.
I don't know that they can afford it some of the time.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I want to ask you about another aspect of 2020 that can't go unmentioned because it kind of tied in with everything. The BLM, anti-police, rioting, all of that stuff. And I heard Dave Smith once say, these riots aren't about police brutality. It's a reaction to the psychosis that the lockdowns caused, which I thought was an interesting take. But what was your takeaway? Any crazy moments that kind of changed the way you think on some of those events?
Well, I mean, I was completely convinced that Black Lives Matter as an entity, as even a concept, as an organizing principle is completely bankrupt, corrupt, racist, counterproductive, self-destructive, and a front for essentially other kinds of grievances. Grievances against wealthy people, grievances against businesses for existing. Who got attacked in the riots? It was defenseless white people, basically, on the street, random white people on the street. How is that doing anything to help, end the shootings of innocent Black people? And then businesses, of course. Why would you attack a Wendy's? Why would you attack a mom and pop store? I mean, that's what was going on in Kenosha. I mean, Rochester, those videos of like people defending their little stores, their little family-owned stores, and getting punched out, knocked out, unconscious.
Yeah.
Getting hit by like sticks and bats and shit. That's just envy. It's the resentment that comes from envy of people who have more than you have or have something that you want. And even though they have no clue that being a small businessman is like nothing but work and toil and stress, they assume it's just you're rich if you have a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you live better than I do if you own a business, even if it's just a hardware store in downtown Kenosha, right? Yeah. But I mean, we've been saying this, or I've been saying this, and friends of mine have been saying this for years and years. BLM has always just made it about race, and it's not about race. If it were about race, I'd be right with them. Segregation was about race.
Yeah.
Slavery was about race. Those were absolutely racist institutions that we all agree needed to be done away with immediately, almost by any means necessary. It would have been an emergency if I'd been living at that time to get rid of those things. And those were absolutely clearly racist institutions. Not a single white person was enslaved. Not a single white person was segregated in that way, was stopped from, using a water fountain, right? But there are 500,000 white people in cages in this country right now. 500,000 people in prison who are white, so-called Caucasians, right? We have twice as many white people shot dead, unarmed white people shot dead per year as Black people by the cops. Now, I know it's still disproportionately, Black people, but that's a hell of a lot of collateral damage to your own people if it's a racist project. If the whole point of this is to damage Black bodies, to kill Black people, that's a very weird way to go about it. Mm-hmm. To imprison 500,000 of your own people and to kill twice as many whites as Blacks. I mean, that's a lot of collateral damage to get your racist project to be successful. My goodness, it makes no sense. But we could instead join together, white people, Black people. By the way, Mexicans get ignored in this too.
Yeah.
Latinos get ignored in this too. Do you think they don't feel the brunt of the state? You don't think they're in prison? You don't think they get shot to death? We could all join together regardless of race. What a concept. What a weird concept. Regardless of race. And oppose state violence. State violence. Not racist violence. State violence. Period. End the drug war. Legalize drugs. Fucking disarm the cops. I'm not opposed to that. Defund the cops to some extent, to a large extent, maybe totally. Mm-hmm. I'm open for that conversation. Let's get rid of the cops and let's defend our own communities, our own houses, our own lives.
Mm-hmm.
Through private security or our own security or buying guns or printing guns.
Yeah.
Organizing neighborhood watch groups. There's all kinds of things that even liberals wouldn't have a problem with that could replace the cops. Get rid of all these laws, these broken windows laws, right? That put cops in the faces of people in poor neighborhoods who are Black and white and Latino and Asian. It's not just Black people. They get disproportionately affected for sure. And that has historical reasons for sure. But there are so many other people who get murdered by the state every day, who get put in cages every day. I'm sitting a few miles from San Quentin prison. You know, I interviewed a man on my show, Marvin Mutch, who did 41 years in San Quentin. White guy. Does anyone care? No. Except for me. Michael Bell Sr., he was also on my show, the father of Michael Bell Jr., who was murdered by the Kenosha police about 15 years ago. They had him handcuffed against the squad car with his face down on the squad car, and another cop came up and put the gun to his temple and fired. But it misfired, so he reloaded and put the gun to his head again and then pulled the trigger and blew Michael Bell Jr.'s brains out. And this, by the way, Buck, has been proven in court. That's not even controversial. So, and they're white. Michael Bell Jr. was white. So Michael Bell Sr. has launched about a 15-year campaign to end, to limit the police ability to do that kind of thing, right? He reached out to the Martin Luther King family. No response. He went to Soldier Field in Chicago and took a knee on the field when Colin Kaepernick was doing that. And he reached out to Colin Kaepernick's lawyer and asked him if Colin Kaepernick could just tweet out that Michael Bell Sr., whose son was shot to death by nothing. Fuck these people. They're not interested in ending police violence, state violence, mass incarceration. They're interested, I guess, in the equal racial distribution of violence.
Yeah.
I guess. Or really, maybe it's just that they're totally narcissistic and they have been taught that the best people in American history were civil rights leaders and Black power leaders. And you may have noticed that they adopt the affect of those people. So Colin Kaepernick has a big afro.
Yeah.
And the raised fist of the Black Panthers. And whenever they talk about what's going on in the United States, they don't talk about actually what's going on now. They talk about slavery and segregation and Jim Crow.
Right.
And the statue to commemorate the Black Lives Matter movement that was erected in London was eventually taken down. But you know what it was of? It was of a young woman Black Lives Matter protester with her fist up. I don't recall Martin Luther King or Malcolm X demanding that they have that the government create statues of them. That was not victory for them, getting statues of themselves made.
Right.
I think it's narcissistic LARPing. That does not mean that what happened to Eric Garner and Tamir Rice weren't atrocities and that those cops should at the very least be fired and never allowed to have any power over anyone again. But I do think that much, possibly all of this movement is narcissistic LARPing and virtue signaling.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to say that. It's very tragic for me to say that, because in 2014, 2015, around the time of Ferguson, I was weeping every day looking at these videos of Black men getting shot down in the street. And I was there, man. I was ready to throw some rocks back then. But then I found out Black Lives Matter, these self-appointed leaders of this movement, right? Remember, no one's been elected. There aren't even really organizations. There's just this blanket term that encompasses a lot. Now, there are a lot of organizations, by the way, that are BLM associated. And it's fucking true. Most of them are financed by George Soros.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that alone also doesn't mean anything bad about them necessarily. But let's be honest, at least. It's not really a grassroots movement anymore if it depends on being financed by a multi-billionaire. The civil rights movement had no George Soros. The Black Panthers didn't really have a George Soros. I mean, there were a couple people in Hollywood who gave them a little bit of money, but it wasn't like this, right? And they nonetheless had a mass movement that changed American history, changed world history forever.
Yeah.
Because they had people in the streets. They could get enough people in the streets without being paid. So the whole thing is really depressing. One of my projects has been, this is why I had Michael Bell on the show, is I want to build not a cross-racial, but a non-racial coalition of people who have been victims of state violence, like all the families and friends, regardless of their goddamn color, of people who were murdered or caged by the state. I want to see, my dream, Buck, is to see someday on a stage, a big, huge stage, Madison Square Garden kind of stage, I want to see a rainbow of colors of family members of people who are either in prison or dead because of the cops and prosecutors and judges, because of people like Kamala Harris, who last time I checked was not counted as a white person, right? That's going to change these things. You may have noticed there has been no significant criminal justice reform.
Right.
BLM's been around for 6 years now, screaming all the time. And yet there is name a law, name the repeal of a law that has done anything to significantly. We still have 2.3 million people in prison. The number of unarmed people shot to death per year has remained the same. And if it's armed people, it's 1,000 people a year. 1,000 people total per year in this country get killed by the cops. There's something really wrong, even though I know that most of them had guns or knives and were actively trying to attack the cops.
Right.
Sure. But we've set this up. This doesn't happen in other countries. We've set up, and I can't exactly explain why, but there's something very, very wrong in this country for that to be happening at that rate every year, but it hasn't changed. And I think that's because it's only been cast as a race issue.
Yes.
And so you alienate all these white people like Michael Bell Sr. I mean, God bless that guy. They've given him can you imagine that? Your son gets executed by the cops and Colin Kaepernick and Black Lives Matter and Martin Luther King's family couldn't give a shit about you. Right? But he's very unusual. He's just a very dogged guy. He was an Air Force, I think, captain. And, he's a tough dude. And this is his life's mission. But most people will just shrink from that and not carry on the struggle. But we certainly could have lots and lots and lots of people marching in the streets who aren't, 22-year-old Harvard graduates with afros.
Right.
Let me say that again. That's who Black Lives Matter is. It's college-educated people. It's college-educated people who speak the language that's spoken in colleges, who have imported all these other politics, some of which I agree with. Fine, But it's not about trans people. It's not about gender even. And I'm on their side on a lot of that stuff, And they speak in language that also just the language itself alienates people who didn't go to Harvard and Yale. So it's a terrible missed opportunity. It's really tragic. We could save a lot of lives. We could free a lot of people if we stop thinking about this thing in racial terms exclusively.
Yeah.
So
I feel that some of that language, at least the racial term aspect of it's going to get worse in the year to come, at least with someone you mentioned, Kamala Harris. And one of the things I appreciate about you is I think that we both have what my wife has branded Kamala derangement syndrome.
I do.
Because I do kind of get the TDS now.
Yeah.
I understand it because I have it with her.
Yeah.
I hated Hillary Clinton. I still do, of course. I know you do as well.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to recognize that she was very smart, and she is very smart.
Yeah.
But when I hear Kamala speak, I hear the same authoritarianism, the hunger for power, but she's dumb.
Yeah.
And it just is like nails on a chalkboard.
Yep. I do have, we'll call it KDS.
KDS.
Kamala derangement syndrome. I do. I admitted this on Twitter. I said that she does to me what Trump does to lefties.
Yeah.
I do lose a little bit of rationality. The difference is that I actually know what her policies are. And I actually care about her policies and I actually track her policies. I pay attention to the policies, not just her personality. Right? Most people on the left just see the orange hair and they hear the words and they freak out about Trump. They would have no idea that Trump pardoned a whole bunch of black people, by the way.
Right.
Got them out of prison. They would have no idea. Thanks to Kim Kardashian and others, but yeah, she's amazing. So for me, I don't know what it is for you, but for me, she reminds me of in Berkeley, where I grew up. This was in the 1970s when I was in school in the Berkeley public schools. And this was when Berkeley was sort of at the height of its project to racially integrate the entire city. It was a massive social engineering project. So I was the first. Kamala, she's actually said this, and she lived in my neighborhood when we were kids. We lived in the same neighborhood in Berkeley when we were the same age.
Wow.
Yeah, and she has said she was the second in the second class of students in the country to be bused.
Yeah.
For racial integration. I was the first.
Okay.
So I think I'm a year older, but I was the same. So 1970, I was in kindergarten. And if you look it up, Berkeley was the first city in the country to do busing.
Mm-hmm.
That was me. I was on those damn buses to achieve perfect racial integration and equality. So also they did that with the staff in the schools. So the school staff, the principals and the teachers, my goodness, it was, I think most of my teachers and principals from K through 12 were black.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I can go through the list of them. Yeah. In Berkeley. So, and they were petty authoritarians.
Mm.
These were not nice people. Again, this is cross-racial, everybody. Principals suck. Teachers are prison guards.
Mm-hmm.
They're not all bad. A lot of my friends, a lot of members of Renegade University are public school teachers and they're great people, but that's despite their job.
Yeah. Right.
That's despite their job. In my experience, and I had a lot, just like everybody, K through 12, that's 13 years of this, of how many teachers is that, The vast majority were dumb, mediocre, petty authoritarians, and with a strong strain of sadism too. They enjoyed throwing me into a closet, which one of them did. They enjoyed picking. In my 5th grade class, Mr. Perone, and I hate to racialize this, but yeah, African-American guy, he would pick up the kids. These were 10-year-olds, right? 5th grade. He would pick us up by the seat of our pants and then just carry us across the room to shame us and then drop us if we were at all out of line, right? Ms. Hall, who replaced him, 6th grade, African-American woman, she berated me. She turned me into the assistant principal for making jokes in class when she was trying to teach us something. I spent a lot of time in assistant principal's offices. And in those offices, I remember Mrs. Lim, now she was Asian American, but I remember her looking at me in the eye and saying, I know what's wrong with you. It's at home, isn't it? It's a 4-letter word that begins with hell. Well, it begins with H. And I was like, wow, you don't know anything about me, but you're psychologically torturing me.
Mm-hmm.
So I hate those fucking people. To this day. And Kamala Harris is so much like them.
Yes.
She looks like them. She acts like them. She is a midwit like all of them. And she's got this authoritarian, sadistic streak. There's a really interesting theory about Kamala Harris. I don't know if you heard about this, but so she, is Indian, of Indian descent, but through Jamaica. So I think there were Indians in Jamaica. That's her family.
Mm-hmm.
And I have heard from Jamaicans that in Jamaica, the Indian sort of middle class is notoriously racist against blacks.
Oh.
They are the authoritarians of Jamaican society.
Okay.
And I strongly suspect that's what Kamala is about, even though she now likes to identify as black.
Certainly.
I think Kamala Harris doesn't really like black people. Why else would you become prosecutor? Listen, Why else would you become the district attorney for San Francisco? Okay, San Francisco is made up entirely of two groups of people: very rich white people and very poor black people. So who do you think commits the crime in San Francisco? Who do you think the district attorney of San Francisco would be exclusively pretty much concerned with? Black people. And their job is pretty much exclusively to imprison black people. That's San Francisco. We don't have a middle class in San Francisco.
Right.
There's no middle class. There's no white criminals in San Francisco. There are in other places, for sure. But if you're an anti-black racist, that is the job for you. Do you think she's putting like tech workers in jail? Hell no.
Right.
It's black people who live in Hunters Point and Bayview and in the projects that are scattered around the city. I'm sure 90+% of the crime in San Francisco is committed by people of color, so to speak. And that's who you're putting in prison. If you're the DA, that's what she did. Same for the AG in California, Attorney General. The vast majority of people she was putting in prison were not white. I think Kamala Harris is an anti-black racist.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that theory, but obviously it certainly makes sense. I find it interesting that groups like BLM were looking to her as some type of savior, like the cop, right. Kamala, the savior for BLM.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then of course, Biden's a whole other can of worms too. Let me tell you guys about a sponsor of this show, and that is Zippix toothpicks. They are wonderful flavored toothpicks that have nicotine in each one. You can find them at zippixtoothpicks.com. A lot of you are probably trying to kick a bad habit here in the new year. These are a great alternative to that habit. And come on, let's face it. They're sponsoring this show, so that's a good thing. But I'm telling you, they're the cheapest alternative on the market. They've got flavors. Let me tell you, right here, I've got my packet. Zippix toothpicks, spearmint spice. I love this flavor. They've got whiskey flavor. They've got clove flavor. They want to sponsor shows like mine, so that should make you want to give them some business. They've got a promo code, a new one with the Counterflow podcast. The promo code is BUCK, B-U-C-K, of course. So go to Zippix Toothpicks. That promo code, BUCK, will get you 10% off of your order. Once again, zippixtoothpicks.com, promo code BUCK for 10% off your order. They're delicious. They got just the right amount of nicotine in them, and you will enjoy them. Kick that nasty habit, and let's get back to the show. At least half the population, we'll say half the voting population, a percentage of them, a large percentage, because I know a lot of them, believe that Biden will be an illegitimate president. And I think stronger than the left did with Trump and the whole Russia stuff, because that kind of fell apart. And there's not going to be enough investigations on the voter fraud for it to ever fall apart. And I don't think it would fall apart, to be honest with you.
Right.
Do you think that the fact that a lot of people see it that way effectively neuters a Biden administration for nationwide mandate type stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I have been watching Steve Bannon's War Room.
Yes, me too.
It's hilarious because it's all about God and country and family and all these things I am totally against. But boy, did he convince me that there was widespread election fraud. So let me make that really clear to everybody listening. I don't want to be called a Bannonite or a Trump. I mean, and he's a protectionist. He's against immigration. I'm an open borders guy, people. Every damn show he does a salute to the troops. I'm like, and that's not me. I'm an anti-war guy. But I don't, it's overwhelming. There's so many crazy numbers that are just inexplicable except as fraud. But the main point is that he's leading a huge movement.
Yeah.
That show has millions and millions of listeners and viewers, right?
Yeah.
And we know that how many 70 plus, 80, close to 80 million people, right?
Yeah.
Voted for Trump, right?
Right.
Well, you think how do you think they feel about this? And are they going to go away?
Right.
No, they're not going to go away. The weird thing is that Fox News has capitulated.
Yeah.
And so they have nowhere to go but Bannon's war room, basically. I mean, it's hard to find an outlet that takes any of this shit seriously, which sometimes makes me feel like maybe I made a big mistake. And by the way, libertarians have been very odd on this. Most libertarians have been dismissive of claims of fraud. I don't know if you've noticed this, but
yeah, I kind of separate the libertarian camp into red and blue-pilled camps.
yeah,
The blue-pilled ones write it off as a joke.
the vast majority. I mean, my friends at Reason, and I love
Yes.
them, and I'm closest to those people. They wrote multiple pieces per day dismissing these claims as ludicrous.
Yes.
The first time I've ever had a major disagreement with Reason on something.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure it happened, but I'm just saying the evidence is so huge that it demands an investigation.
Yeah.
And that's not happened. By the way, people say, well, it's been through the courts. No, it hasn't been through the courts. The courts have refused to see the cases, to hear the cases. They've refused to look at the evidence. That's what they're doing. When you refuse to hear the case, they're not looking at the evidence.
Right.
Yeah. So these multiple jurisdictions in which Biden outperformed not just Hillary Clinton, but Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Among like black populations. And we know that Trump, doubled his numbers among black voters.
Yeah.
How's that possible? Because, by the way, a lot of black people were hip to what Biden was about.
Yeah.
A lot of black people knew very well what the crime bill was all about. Why? Because they were related to someone in prison because of it.
Yeah.
I mean, most black people in this country, I think this is just true, it's objectively true. I think the majority of black people in this country are related to someone who's done prison time. And a huge number of that has to be from the Biden crime bill.
Yeah.
We know this because we know that there's been a massive spike since 1994 in incarceration. So yeah, I forgot what your original question
Well,
was.
just I'm anticipating, and I hope this isn't me being blue pill.
Oh, yeah.
I'm anticipating a healthy dose of at least some type of federalism from states like mine here in Texas, to where I honestly cannot imagine the possibility of a nationwide lockdown. It's not going to happen here in my state. I can't imagine a nationwide mask mandate.
Right.
It's not going to happen here.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's going to be ugly. I think your original question was about like what will happen with the people who are disaffected, who feel like the election was stolen from them.
Yeah.
And they're not going to go away. And, again, I'm not a Trump supporter. I think a lot of Trump supporters are idiots in a lot of ways. But it's also true. And I've watched how many hours of video? I've watched all the videos. It's hard to find an act of violence, unprovoked violence from a Trump supporter.
Yeah.
It's hard to find one. It is really hard. It's really easy to find acts of unprovoked violence from anti-Trump people.
Yeah.
Super easy. But show me a video of a Trump supporter hitting someone or shooting someone or kicking someone in the head in an unprovoked way. I can't even think of one. Right. They'll trot out Charlottesville and the guy who drove his car through there. I mean, maybe was he really a Trump supporter? I don't even know. Like we haven't heard from him since, right? He's deep in the bowels of the federal penitentiary. But let's grant them that one. Let's say that is one. That's one. That's the only one I could possibly think of. 5
years ago, we got one.
And that was yeah. How many years ago was that?
Yeah.
Exactly. So will they start to become violent? They tried to break into the Oregon State Capitol, right where I used to live, by the way, in Salem. I lived in Salem, about 2 miles from that state capitol. They're breaking windows. And I did see them accost a journalist who had like a camera in their face. And I don't know, it was out of context. I don't know what happened right before then. That was like maybe the closest thing I've seen to unprovoked violence from a Trump supporter.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if those guys were Trump supporters. They were just anti-lockdown people.
Yeah.
But yeah, with the lockdown also, we have a lot of rage against that. And we have a lot of rage against the election, what happened. And that's tens of millions of people.
Yeah.
And here's, I don't want to be fear-mongering, but I bet you almost all of them have guns.
Yeah.
That's who owns the guns in our country, for sure.
Yeah. If there's going to be a right-wing version of violence, I kind of look at that as long wick, big bang. because the left-wing version of it's the least little thing will set them off, and they'll, throw something through a window of a store. If there's going to be a right-wing version of it, it's going to be brutal, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't seen it.
No.
I mean, even the militia and the survivalists who got squashed by the feds back in the 80s and 90s, they never attacked anybody in an unprovoked way.
Right.
Again, I think a lot of those people were in fact racist. In fact, I know they were, some of them were in fact Nazis and fascists. I know they were, but oddly enough, they never went out and hurt anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Until they were the ones who got burned alive or shot to death. So, this is a powder keg.
Mm-hmm.
This is a powder keg. And because Bannon's not going away.
No.
And by the way, let me say this also about Steve Bannon. Again, I am on the opposite side of him on many issues. That guy is brilliant.
Yes, he is.
I think he's the most brilliant political strategist, activist, and intellectual in politics in maybe my lifetime.
Yeah.
He is super brilliant. Everybody should go watch. If you don't believe me, go watch his debate with David Frum in the monk debates in Canada. This was a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Just Google that. David Frum, the asshole neocon, big Iraq war supporter, big public intellectual. Now he's like a never Trumper,
Of course.
Lincoln Project scumbag.
Yes.
But so he gets up on stage with Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon had not done any media at all at that point. He had been tossed out of the Trump administration, been gone, been in the wilderness. And he came back into this debate and he wiped the floor with David Frum. And not only that, he converted a lot of the audience who was hissing before he even came on the stage. Everybody should go watch that if you doubt Steve Bannon's effectiveness.
Yeah.
That guy, and by the way, he's organizing an international movement. This is what Steve Bannon's been doing. He's been going from country to country to country, developing alliances between all the nationalist populist movements and political parties, from Brazil to the UK to Europe to the United States. It's an international, and it's not a good one. I don't like it. I don't want those people to take power. They're going to close the borders. That's not cool with me. They're going to go bomb Iran if they had their way. That's what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's, but they need to be taken seriously. And this is the left's great mistake.
Yes.
You're not taking your enemies seriously. Go watch Steve Bannon.
I think it's interesting you point that out. I think that's been the right's mistake up until about the last 4 years, is they were not taking the left seriously. And you'd hear the right go, we want to eliminate the Department of Education. No, you don't. But you would hear the left say things like stuff you might agree with them on. And as I would, we want gay marriage. Okay. And the right would fight. Next thing you know, it's nationwide. And the right just goes, oh, okay. But everything the left has pushed for over the last 50 years almost has been successful because the right just coalesces and won't fight and doesn't take it serious. Now I do feel they're starting to take it seriously.
It's so funny because that's what the left used to always say about the right, that the right was very serious and the left was not serious enough about taking power. And they still sort of say this. It's just hilarious to me. It's like, someone's really wrong here. But I think it's not so much that either side's not as serious as the other one. It's just the culture has shifted.
Yes.
Right. And so law and policy and then politicians' behavior follows from culture.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were opposed to gay marriage 20 years ago. They said so explicitly out loud in public. Right. Now they're all for it. Kamala Harris was Miss Lock 'em Up when she was the DA in San Francisco and the AG in California. She sounded like Ronald Reagan or Donald Trump.
Yeah.
She sounded like Donald Trump on crime. Now she's all about, whoa, criminal justice is necessary and we're going to blah, blah, blah. I mean, same with Biden.
Yeah.
Hello. Dude in 1994 gave that amazing speech. And this is another thing everyone should go watch. Go watch Biden's speech from the House or the Senate floor in 1994 when he's talking about the crime bill and how proud he is of it, how excited he is about it, how it has 59, and then he changes it, 60 new death penalties for drug-related crimes and mandatory minimum sentences, and we're going to lock these people up. and he calls them predators, not super predators, but he
Yeah.
calls them predators.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly bloodthirsty speech, and he gave many of those. Now he's Mr. Warm Fuzzy. We need to let people out of prison and help people. We'll see. We'll see if these lifelong cops, and that's really what they were most committed to, Harris and Biden,
Yeah.
will now become abolitionists like they're claiming to be. I don't see it. I doubt it.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw Biden give a tongue lashing to Al Sharpton and all those civil rights leaders in that secret Zoom video that came out.
Yeah.
Man, what a racist, by the way.
Yeah.
The way he talks to black people is so condescending. And and a lot of, like, Sean King was on this. A lot of, like, BLM people were not having it
Right.
because he sounded like an old goddamn cracker plantation owner. You know, when he was talking to these black folk on that Zoom meeting. It's disgusting. I mean, and I don't call people racist lightly. I use that word very sparingly. But that guy, how is he not? I mean, to say you're not black if you ain't black if you don't vote for me.
Yeah.
That's definitionally racist.
Yeah.
That's definitionally racist. Your politics is determined by your race? Huh? Racism, bro. Sorry. Yeah. So we'll see. It's going to be a mess. It'll be interesting. But it's nice that at least Trump derangement syndrome, I guess, will be gone. We don't have to deal with that anymore.
No, now it's just you and I with Kamala derangement syndrome.
Yeah, that's right.
We can close out, but we got to do it on some silver linings, some optimistic notes, because I have listeners of this show text me saying, I need some light here. I'm feeling black pilled.
Easy.
So there's going to be good stuff coming in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just let you have the floor. You can pick and choose what you want to talk about in that regard.
Well, there's going to be a lot of good stuff. I know in my world, I'm very excited about my own life. But yeah, Renegade University, can we announce it now?
Yes.
So we are going to have an incredible event at the new home of one Buck Johnson.
That's right.
In Lockhart, Texas in April 9th, 10th, and 11th. It's not on sale yet. This is the first time it's been made public, but it is happening. We already have guests who are coming. Not going to announce who they are yet, but I can guarantee you that your listeners, I don't really see how they wouldn't want to come to this, given who the guests will be, right? I mean, I think pretty much every single Buck Johnson fan is going to want to come to this event because of who we're bringing and because it's going to be at your house, incredible place on an acre of property in Lockhart, the barbecue capital of Texas, which means it's the barbecue capital of the world. And that's going to be April 9th, 10th, and 11th. Look out for that. I am, as I told you before we started recording, that's the thing I'm most excited about for 2021. It's just going to be so much fun. But yeah, more broadly, Trump derangement syndrome will be gone. Thank God, the greatest scourge of this in this country over the last 4 years, right? That many of us have suffered from tremendously. What has Trump derangement syndrome done to you personally? Ask yourself that, everyone listening, right? It has caused me tremendous suffering and pain. That'll be gone.
You mean from others having it?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Being the victim of it. Yes.
Yes.
That'll be gone. And it's a lot more fun to be just the opposition.
Mm.
So, we get to just sit back and throw rocks at the White House all day long. And every mistake they make, we get to dance.
Yeah.
And I want to rub their faces in it. I'm sorry. I know this is a little irrational and a little bit, it's vindictive, but yeah, God damn it. It's time for some payback. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I feel it and I don't see why I shouldn't. What's
100%.
been said to me, I've been called a Nazi. I've had publications, outlets that I've worked for that are utterly innocuous and benign be listed as Russian assets. I've been called a Russian asset. I've been blacklisted. I've been scorned. My family thinks I have characterological flaws because I didn't think Trump was a Nazi. So that'll be gone. And we get to put them on stage. You take the stage, you take power, see how much you like it. Mm-hmm. And my goodness gracious, if you don't like progressives, if you don't like the Democratic Party, what could be better, actually? What could be better than having Joe Biden and Kamala Harris be the Democratic president and vice president? What could be better for those of us who dislike the Democratic Party intensely? I couldn't have picked better candidates for them because it's all going to be exposed now. We will now be able to say and show, see, the Democratic Party is the party not just of mass incarceration, even more importantly, it's also the party of war.
Yeah.
Because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, guess what, guys, voted for every fucking war that they could. Every one. For Biden, it's been every war since Vietnam he's voted for. Not just voted for, cheer-led for.
Yeah.
The Iraq, there's another thing people can Google, fantastic photo of George W. Bush signing the authorization, the AMUF, and Joe Biden standing right there in the Oval Office smiling down at him because he was the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee who pushed that shit through Congress.
Yeah.
He was the biggest Democratic cheerleader for the Iraq War. How this punk became their guy. But he did. They chose him. They shamed us for not voting for him. They shamed us. I've been shamed for not voting for Joe Biden, a racist warmonger.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you own it now, people.
Yes.
You own it. This is your bed. Now lie in it.
Yes.
So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, that's what a white pill to go out on. Well, Thad, guest number 1 on Counterflow.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much for being here.
Feels good. I'm honored. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for listening to that first ever interview on the new Counterflow podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and I've got lots of awesome things coming your way. I promise it's only going to go up, 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 and up. Share this show. Give it a like, a subscribe, all of that stuff. You know where it's at on iTunes. I still have the Death to Tyrants podcast website. We are switching that. We're in the midst of switching that. You know, this stuff happens so quickly. You got to catch up. So once Counterflow podcast website is done, I'll be advertising that. Until then, you can find me on Twitter at BuckRebel, BuckRebel. You guys have an excellent week. Happy New Year. And I look forward. There's going to be some wild, amazing things coming in 2021. And get ready. It's going to be fun. See you soon.
You get split in fucking half, but I call him the hologram brass. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.
This has been the Counterflow Podcast, a part of the Renegade Media Network.